Pay attention. All right, we're trying to get started. I have a quick request of Ben Eldridge. If we're going to start having long necks in the room, he's got to bring it for everyone.
Yeah, well, the sarsaparilla, man. Sure. I don't know what's in that, though. Is that your good? Is that
Not mine.
your travel jet?
A couple of housekeeping items. Denise Deaver passed along a note here. Many of y'all remember Bob Hartwig, who was a member of this group. Bob is now in hospice in Santa Fe. You recall that he moved there earlier this year, and right after that lost his wife. And so he's in hospice now. He's still interested, though, in what we are doing here and has asked about our work. He would like to hear from members of this committee to hear how things are going. And so I want to give you his phone number. If you feel inclined, give him a call and wish him well. His number is 830-388-1983. That's the year I was born. Okay, maybe not.
Nice try.
So,
Anyway, one other bit of housekeeping. John Kite, the other Energizer bunny, is scheduled. He's doing fine. He's scheduled to have his surgery tomorrow, and he got his COVID test, so he can go ahead with surgery. He decided to pass on today's meeting, so that he didn't run the risk of catching COVID. So keep him and his family in your prayers as well.
so along that line, I was talking to John a week ago or so, and was saying that maybe we could find a way for him to observe the meetings, perhaps real time. I don't know. I was thinking I could, yeah.
No, the IT person was in there. They're filming this? Is it?
They filmed it.
So the cameras are up there
Yeah.
and all of
So if you want to play the camera, just go ahead and like that.
Well, I guess what I'm really trying to get at with that is for his own psychological well-being.
Yeah.
Because this is a rough deal. For
Yeah,
him.
and I expect that he will be out more than just this coming meeting. So I guess what I was thinking, is there a way to zoom him into the meeting?
We might be able to do that.
Okay, if you could, that would be appreciated. I know John would appreciate it. I think it's the least we can do for his enduring contributions.
For sure.
Anything else? All right, we've got the first opportunity for public comment. We have two opportunities, as you know. We'll go around the room this way. Denise?
Hi, Denise Deaver, D-E-V-E-R, no A's, no S's. I had listened to last city council meeting, and if the members of this group have not listened to the last city council meeting and Jeff Carroll's wonderful update, and it really was a good one, you need to listen to it, because I think we've got a big communication hole between this committee and the city council. This is the second meeting in the month of September that I've listened to some comments that were made, and I'm seeing stuff coming out of committee through the YouTube videos and thinking, wow, we're on the right track, we're doing the right thing, we're moving forward, we got a plan, we're getting there. And they're talking like, you guys aren't doing what they want you to do, and they've got a better idea, and they're going to move with their idea. So you need to listen to the video, and I think the committee as a whole needs to figure out how to communicate with the city council, please.
Thank
Okay?
you. Wes? Tom? Zach?
Bob, I do have a comment related to that I'd like to take 1 minute to offer the committee, but I can do that after the public committee.
Let's do that. Okay. We're done with public comments.
John?
Oh, Lance, I'm sorry.
Can I get at least a minute?
Tell you what, I'll give you a minute and a half. How about that?
The Kendall Gateway study, I apologize for bringing this up, but it's been getting a lot of airtime lately in various corridors around town, various surrogates. I implore the members of this committee, I'm not a member of this committee, but I implore the members of this committee, I know everybody's busy, Ben Eldridge, the man with 10 jobs, But I know everybody's busy in this room, but please, if you can, if you haven't done it already, please look at the Kendall Gateway study online on the TxDOT website. They've got that webpage there. Look at two items if you can. The 25-page initial traffic summary, which is Appendix A, and also the 60-page online survey results. I don't expect everybody to go through the 1,100 comments in there, but boy, it's over 80% against Gateway, maybe 90% in the comments. And I know that can be some subjective stuff, and this committee has a technical approach and an engineering approach. It's not all about just opinion, I understand that, but it's very eye-opening if you just read one page. Also would like to mention, before anybody adopts this Kendall Gateway study, and yes, there are some good nuggets in there, I will admit it, of data, but most of the data seems to be flawed. For example, the volume data in there is kind of stale because, especially related to Main Street and River Road, those data were collected before Herf Bypass Road officially opened in 2017. There was a preliminary opening of Herf Bypass in late 2016, but really not a full open until 2017. So that flaw was a glaring flaw in this study, the data related to Main Street and River Road traffic volumes. What do they look like today? We all know there's still issues, especially certain times of the day, but it hasn't lessened. Also, I want to mention the Bluetooth technology for origin and destination analysis. They're saying that 50% of the Main Street traffic is pass-through, but that's not my experience, my anecdotal experience of all the trucks I've followed over the past 2 years through there. Most of the ones going north on North Main Street are going to the shopping centers up there, they're going to retail businesses, they're going to construction sites. They're not going to Comfort. Also, right-of-way sizes mentioned in the study. The explicit public number was 300 feet of right-of-way would be impacted if land had to be taken. But when the explicit, but implied was 500 feet once you started reading through the documents. Finally, the legends on some of these final maps had limited environmental impact data, 0 in the southeast quadrant, which is probably the most sensitive and has the largest aquifer recharge zone in the county, which most people just pretend like doesn't even exist. And also some of the home impacts, some of the buildings that would have been wiped out by a 500-foot right-of-way. Finally, Don, I apologize if I'm going over a minute and a half, I'll close this. We all know what the problem areas are in here. You all know better than I do. This committee and the committee in 2007, the TPCC, I can never get the name right, the Citizens Committee, you all know what the problem areas are. There's basically 4 problem areas, major ones, there's 4 minor ones. But the 4 major ones are IH-10 and 87, IH-10 and 46, River Road in 87, and River Road in 46, also known as Sheep Dip. So that really kind of boils down to 2 areas, River Road and the interstate. And just 5 more seconds. The interstate stuff seems to be getting fixed, and Herf Bypass is taking volumes off of River Road. We need new data, basically. Adopting this study would be probably a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. We'll have another shot at the end of the meeting as well. John?
Thanks, Don. So, as Denise mentioned, there was some conversation at the city council meeting recently, and it was getting some chatter on the internet, and so I listened in, and I'll agree with part of what Denise said, is that when I listened to it, it occurred to me that maybe we as a committee could be doing a better job of reaching out to our city council members. So I did. I called most of them and had some conversations with them, and learned a few things I just wanted to share with the committee. One, when I talked to Councilwoman Woolard, she indicated a couple things. One is she felt like since it had been so long that we were shut down for COVID, that a lot of the public initially were pretty well informed about what we were doing, but then the fact that we kind of restarted and we've been doing some stuff has maybe been less in the public eye. She felt like people in her neighborhood have been voicing that they weren't really aware of what was going on with the committee. When I did talk to her about how initially our plan was to go through all these projects and to go back out again with sort of the clean map. And in her opinion, it was worth the extra month or whatever amount of time that would be required to do that in order to get that extra round of public input. So otherwise, I had a really good conversation with her. I think some of her comments maybe came off a little bit rough in that council meeting, but I think she was. I think her intention sounded, good and sound. I also talked to Councilman. I almost said Van Wolf. Macaluso, not yet. And he brought up that he's very aware and very concerned about the financial costs of traffic, of building roads, of doing upgrades, and felt like if this committee presents them with a list of 40, 50, 100 projects, that's not going to be helpful. That he really, really wants a very short list of projects aimed at addressing congestion. And so I thought that was really interesting because I realized that we really hadn't gone and asked specifically in the report what would be most helpful for your decision-making process. And so so that was useful to hear, and I thought I would just share that with the committee because I think as we go forward with the design of the report, we had some discussions about how to prioritize or whether to prioritize, or maybe to have some buckets. The thing I got back from Macaluso was that he would very much like a extremely short list of the highest priority target projects, possibly to do what Lance was talking about, to address those 4 or 2 or whatever these key big problem areas. What are the few things we could do there? Just because we have a big long list right now and it's a dream list and lots of stuff that could make the town better, but it is extremely expensive. I talked to a couple other council members as well, and I think the sentiment was, I guess what I'll close on is that I wanted to just encourage the committee to consider if it takes us maybe an extra month or 2 to do the job right. I think it might be worth us taking that time because I feel like the outline that Northern has come up with and the way we're getting through projects is fantastic. I feel like we're really starting to hit our post-pandemic stride here, so to speak. And to me, it would be a shame if we put a hard deadline in December. If when we get there, we realize, you know what, we need another month or 2 to get this wrapped up and do it right. So I'd like the process to maybe guide our deadline more than the deadline guide our process. And so those are my thoughts.
I think your observation that in the absence of financial data, it's going to be very difficult to make some hard decisions. But when we talked about this in the projects subcommittee, we felt like we were going to throw the ideas out on the table and then use our road engineers and our road studies to help us figure out which are those most economic ways to relieve congestion. So I don't think our committee was really thinking in terms of doing each and every one, but because we don't have the engineering other than John and Jeff and Steve, we don't have the engineering and the road knowledge to make more educated decisions, and we don't have current road counts either. Mm-hmm. And I think if we gather that data or consult with someone along those lines, it would be very helpful.
I'll throw in there. So one thing that I found a little strange is that we never really defined a process, but the fact that we haven't started to really tackle controversial topics suddenly means we're not doing our job. I personally have my process, I guess, because we've never defined this committee, right? It's been what again? I'm like a broken record on this, but what is the DNA? What are the alterations we can make to the current infrastructure, what are the best strategies going forward that make for highly efficient mobility. And then from there, there may be controversial topics to solve around how do those interact with that infrastructure. In other words, there seems to be this belief that, a transportation planning committee should just look at, say, thoroughfares or major roadways. And I'm highly skeptical about it. Heck, anybody can go drive around New Braunfels and see that, it doesn't solve everything. And in fact, sometimes it causes other problems. Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm a bit frustrated when I hear these accusations that somehow our committee isn't doing any good work because we're not going sort of what I consider to be the rote direction of just drawing a line on a greenfield map and saying we're done. And I personally, when I look at Texas transportation, I don't see a lot of success with just that strategy. I just see this continued growth inducement, go, 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 keep drawing more green line fields tonight, just go, go, go. And we're so good at everything else that's perfect. Right now I'm looking at a really wide, expensive street to maintain, and I don't ever see anybody drive down it except for church on Sundays.
There's a lot of people that drive down that street.
For
school.
No, for school.
Not just church.
Well, but regardless, my
I'll
point
be over there in 2 hours.
Thank you. My point would be, though, that if we're not making, and it goes back to Jonah's point, if we're not making efficient use of our existing infrastructure, then all we're doing is perpetuating inefficiency. And we're doubling down on it, and we're saying we drew a green line, line on the map, therefore we solved it. And I'm not seeing a lot of examples where that's true.
The one thing I love about Jonah is that he always just lays these things out there so calmly and placidly, and the energy in the room starts to rise. So Bob.
Coming from maybe not an outsider, but the newbie, fourth or fifth meeting, been around for 2-3 months. I think there is adequate information. I think there is a drive to focus on a short term and a long term is what I'm hearing. If I'm hearing wrong, let me know, Mr. Co-Chair. But I think we can come up with a short list and a long term that's also short. There is the data there. I think we just got to make those big decisions and start talking and vet them. Throw out some of the stuff, sure. The information we're getting from crowdsourcing is good. We just got to throw some of that information and hold it for later. It's not dead data. It may get, I'm sure somebody can use it eventually, hopefully soon. But let's just start working on that short list of projects, short term, and short list of projects, long term. We've got it.
The only thing I would add is, I totally understand people's sensitivity about comments made at City Council. I thought Jeff did a good job laying out the progress, what the committee had done. He was rather positive on that. I think the 300, when he mentioned the word 300, that scared Councilman Macaluso, but it's not like this committee is recommending 300 projects. We had 7 on the interim report. The project subcommittee did another 11. That's not a huge, that's 18. That's not a huge number of projects. And not necessarily all those would go through. And yes, there are valid ones in the crowdsourcing, but that's what we're going through now. So I think we just finish our process of going through the crowdsourcing that Northern put together for us, finish the process, and see, because there's going to be a lot of repetition here. Out of those 280 that came from crowdsourcing, a lot of them are in the other 18 projects. So I think people get these snippets and they start getting emotional. Relax, calm down, let us do our job.
So I was at that city council meeting. Here's what I want to say, and I think this is very important for this committee to do. My biggest fear, what happened in that reaction at council, was that they wouldn't hear all the hard work this committee has put in over these last 2 years. We've studied, we've gathered information, we've come up with some great solutions, even with the COVID break. And to be honest with you, during that meeting, I was ready to speak on that, but didn't get called on to speak. It's important that we present this information to City Council, to the Commissioners Court, because of the work we've done. I would hate to see all of that just disappear because somebody else has a different idea of how they perceive our information. Everything that we've done and put into this has been difficult. They're a big group of people. This is a big animal and a ship to steer. And a lot of thought has gone into interconnectivity within existing infrastructure. Northern knows this. The crowdsourcing data is important. It does say exactly what you brought up today. Those choke points are all of them are in the top 10 projects of the crowdsourcing data for automobile transportation. I've got this data memorized. There's not 300 projects. There's 5 or 6 talking about one area. There's 10 people that voted to say, don't build a new road through Kendall Point. And there's 10 people that say, build a road through Kendall Point. That's crazy. But there's projects that we've been talking about. 3351, Esser, River Road, Perf. All of those are within the top 10 of the crowdsourced data that we present. So that's important for us to hear. And that's important for us to speak to the city council. And I will say it in the commissioner's court, and Don will say it, to know what we've done here. Because, God, I would hate to think that whatever we just put all of our lives into for the last 2 years just disappears. You know what I mean?
And a reminder that all these ideas, whether it's crowdsource or subcommittee, were Camel County, Fair Oaks Ranch, Bernie inspired recommendations,
Right,
as opposed to outside.
Right.
I think that's important to keep reinforcing. It's a citizens committee.
And Rich, there was just one comment made at that council meeting about, there was a few people who echoed it about how they're gonna, it's sort of that old line about how people in the past have been unwilling to make these hard decisions, and we really need to make hard decisions. And I just, to me, I want to push back on that narrative a little bit. I think that's what we're doing right now. This is how you make a hard decision. You get the community together. We all work together to come up with the best, most palatable alternatives. It's not hard to make a bad decision. It's not hard to make an unpopular decision. You just make a bad vote and make a lot of people mad. But making a hard decision well is really difficult. And I think that's the work of this committee. And so that was the one, of all the stuff that was said, that idea that this is because people weren't willing to make hard decisions, I would push back on that a little bit. I think that it was more about they were really unpopular, and maybe we can come up with alternatives that are more popular, and that's really the hard work that we're doing here. So I don't want to hijack the committee with this conversation, but
I appreciate all your perspectives and your almost unanimous concern that the work of the committee be respected. And I think no matter what your perspective is, it's good that you feel the need to validate the efforts of the committee.
Don, I'm going to give my 2 cents too. I've listened to Bryce. Well, you work too. Let me know when you're finished.
Okay.
You looked at your agenda like you were ready to move
Well, I
on.
was reviewing my 1, 2, 3s. There are 3 things that I would like to mention. Number 1, there are people in the community who do want a Kendall Gateway. We can't hide from that fact by ignoring that. They have a voice at the table and in the process, and we'll see how the voice plays out. So we can't exclude them any more than we can exclude the voices of the people who want no new roads and no new people. That makes the decision infinitely harder, but we have to grapple with that, or we're just kicking the can to the next committee. We've had 6 or 7 committees here in the last 30 years that have dared to make difficult decisions, to make unpopular decisions without fully consulting the community. And in the words of the mayor, gotten us one road. That's not success. If we have to take an extra month or 3 months or 6 months, I know I sound like Joe Biden now, we need to take what we need to get a report that the community can live with. Not necessarily celebrate, but can live with, and go on and solve the other problems that this community has. And I'm committed to leading that process. Finally, we've had a lot of discussion about what's short-term, what's long-term. And I think we need to rethink. I think everybody's approaching this from the standpoint that they're thinking about short-term projects and long-term projects. And there's a different way to think about that. Short-term can be, there are some projects that we can do pretty quickly that will address congestion, but they're not going to solve the long-term problems, particularly of induced demand. Those are long-term solutions, okay? So we need to think about our report and our recommendations in a way that goes beyond a list of projects. And that's why specifically the third bullet in our charge is to develop policy recommendations. So I dare us to think differently, to not follow the path that every other transportation committee before us has taken, and come up with some projects, get frustrated with the criticism we receive, get frustrated with how long it's taking, get frustrated with the difficulty of the work we have to do, and stay the course. And I believe that we will come up with something that will serve this community and this county well for many years to come. Now I'm done.
Listen to the really terrific conversation around the table and from Denise and Lance. Great comments all. And when Bryce talked about what his experience was at that meeting and the fear of us not having our work respected, it really hits a nerve with me. I am genuinely, profoundly looking forward to the presentation we're going to make to City Council and Commissioners Court. I can't wait. If I have a sense of urgency, is I am so ready to tell the story of what this group has done. The speakers we brought in, the conversations we've had, the governance structure you people set up. There are a dozen things that should impress the authorities who set us up and who sponsored us. So rather than feeling like we're hiding from anybody or we're just delaying or we're just talking stuff to death, quite the opposite. I think we're doing great work. I like the sense of urgency, Jonah, because I feel like it's helping drive what Northern's up to now. And we're going to try to go through a whole bunch of projects today and start calling this list. And if we don't have any kind of a deadline, I'm all right with violating it at the end because we say we need to. But I love having milestones and timelines, and we need to have one that's sooner rather than later so the city doesn't get mad at us and just ignore us. Don stole my thunder on the third bucket. It's not just long-term and short-term, it's policy. And a lot of what's being talked about in here can go into a policy bucket in our report. Think about it. If we are clear and concise about what we're saying for policies about interconnected neighborhoods or solving intersections, not roads, it can be as meaningful as identifying a project's address. So I just want to do that. I just simply think this committee is trying to solve congestion. I think a lot of your ideas that are innovative and let's just build another road with more lanes, I think that innovation's shining through. We'll see how you guys vote. You guys set up a governance structure that's pretty tough to ramrod anything down anybody else's throat in here. So it is going to take consensus. This group's going to be very much aligned before anything moves forward, but I'm ready to see it happen. So thanks.
I was just going to say I can be open-minded about greenfield roads if that's what it takes. I just feel like I'm frustrated because again it goes back to that guy that came and spoke to us at our first meeting, the transportation guy who did the assessments, and he says we tried a lot of things over his 30-year career and none of them worked. And that was a quote. He said none of them worked, and it's because and it's like beating the dead horse or trying to do the same thing and expect a different result. I think we have a really cool, unique opportunity to really try to understand what is the future of transportation in the 21st century strategy. And yes, it may include some other road or a parkway. I can be open-minded about that. But I want to know what we're trying to solve for that after we've figured out the most efficient infrastructure that can be achieved.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to comment about, I sort of approached this with three assumptions. One was we ought to maximize current infrastructure, which we've all called the low-hanging fruit. That's the first assumption I've made. The second assumption I've made is courtesy of Rich's group, and that is this county will continue to grow so long as Bernie Independent School District is one of the best school districts in the state. That's the second assumption I've made. The third assumption I've made is 1 and 2 are going to at some point mandate or require additional capacity. I mean, I think that's inevitable. Maybe not 5 or 10 years, but 20, 30. At some point, 1 and 2 assumption is going to drive the third assumption, which is we're going to need some new capacity somewhere. And I'm hoping that will make that difficult decision and make a recommendation, not about a line on a map, but connectivity between these two major arterials. Jeff, we're going to undergo a new sort of review and study of the city's major thoroughfare plan here pretty quickly. So we can piggyback on that, and if there's some information we think we're still lacking, Bitsy, we ought to ask the city engineer. Is it Kimley Horn that we use for that? Who's our outside consultant?
Kimley Horn's been the one that's been helping us with a lot of our traffic impact assessment.
Okay.
We're actually in the process of doing a request for qualifications and picking a consultant to help us with the major thoroughfare.
How long will that be, Jeff, before that group is on board, do you think? Best guess.
We received statements of qualifications and have been reviewing those, and will be interviewing firms very shortly.
Okay. So 30, 60 days maybe?
60 to 90.
60 to 90, okay. We ought to try to piggyback on that city effort, and if there's some information we think we're lacking, let's get it. I think the city would be more than happy to have their consultant help us with that information. And so if there's something out there we need, let's ask.
And how full spectrum is it? Because again, it usually comes across as, oh, it's thoroughfare planning, and you go, okay, so we're going to look at the roads. Is it also looking at how to improve intersections and other?
We listed 15 different things and said it could include any or all of these type of bills. But we listed several of them, but it included the map, but also the policy, reviewing our street cross sections we have 10 street cross sections right now that several of them are never used. Do we need 10 street cross sections? Can we simplify that? Can we evaluate? We have bike lanes on the pavement. Should they be on the pavement? Should we do one 10-foot shared use path on one side? So just kind of evaluating all that. At the same time, we included language about even reviewing through our brand new Unified Development Code and Engineering Design Manual, check and see if there's any thoughts that they have to make sure everything meshes together with them.
Okay, we're going to move on because I feel like we can circle this bush several times today. I'm going to skip over quickly and touch on item number 5, which is consideration of selected sections of the draft report. In the front of the room, there was a multi-page document that says 10/4/1021 draft, and I printed enough, I believe, for all the committee members. If you did not get one, let me know. I'm not asking you to look at it now. I'm asking you to take it home and read it, and give me your comments by email if you can, or scribble them on the hard copy and give them to me.
Don, can you also email it? I know that it looks like Tim and I have one copy between us back here. So
I will. So who needs one? Kim or Jonah? Kim and Jonah?
Well, I have one right here.
And Rankin.
Okay.
Can you set
Okay,
it?
Rankin.
We'll just send it out.
Can you set it in Word and we can track changes?
You can. That's what is in right now. But I'd like for you to go through that. It's chapters 1 and most of 2. There are a couple of sections of, and Bob and I have both reviewed that and resolved our comments. So I feel like that we're pretty far down the road on that. There are a couple of sections that are not terribly difficult that need to be wrapped up. One is the Kendall County Transportation Planning History. And I think that information exists. It just needs to be pulled from the Kendall County website and describe those things, when those efforts took place and what the outcome was, because I think it will help us reinforce the point that we need to do things a little differently. Another section that needs to be addressed is maximizing aesthetics. It's 2E5 or sheet 4. And Bob and I have talked about where did that come from. And so if we feel like we maybe can eliminate that based on what else is in that section, but we're not going to do that unilaterally without your permission and consent. So just look through the report with an eye to possibly eliminating that one. But there's information, some information is in there about costs and funding that Jeff and others need to review, but we're pretty close on sections 1 and 2, and I will be working on section 3 before the next meeting. Sections 4 and 5 are what we are actually working on with Northern's help. Actually, and we will begin to winnow those down. In the meantime, once we get through with chapter 3, we'll move on to chapter 4 and chapters 6 and 7. If anybody has a burning desire to write on any one of these topics, you are welcome to do it. Please let me know so we don't unnecessarily duplicate effort. So I lay that out there. Without any, don't say anything.
Yeah, if anybody have an opinion, if anybody says anything, they're any people good wordsmiths?
No, we have several in here.
On that topic that I brought up in previous meetings about having mobility solutions for the entire community of all age demographics and socioeconomics, I'll work on some of that. I've had somebody reach out to me who's got some prior experience with that. And I'll draft, I'm going to be a draft, obviously.
All right, anything else on that? All right, Northern, it's your show. You have the rest of the hour and, let's see, we'll leave about a minute and a half for Kyle to, unless Kyle to. Okay, then you have all the rest until 4 o'clock. Oh, yes, excuse me, one more thing. The minutes are there. Have a motion to approve the minutes. Thank you again, Erica.
So moved.
Any objection to adopting minutes? They're adopted. Now you have the floor.
Okay, so the last time we got through the automotive comments for Blanco Road, so this is now the pedestrian and bike comments for Blanco Road. You can see that, two sets of them are pretty much duplicates. They are wanting improved sidewalks and improved crosswalks, as well as 2 comments regarding. Like a drive-in movie.
Yeah, there you go. I like your stuff.
2 comments regarding the road diet, road calming measures, whatever you want to call it. So, with that, would you like to move any of these forward to the final? You see the City of Bernie is working to install the Hawk beacon signal at the old number 9.
So they're going to start construction in the next 2 weeks.
So, do we move, I guess we're moving that forward just for documentation purposes, or should we just strike it for simplicity?
That, if it's being implemented, I'd say we don't need to. Strike it.
Okay.
So,
Done.
Well, we can take credit for everything.
Yes, if we do that.
But we're going to let you say it.
We're doing the
projects with the R.
There you go.
What did you mark that as?
Do not include.
That's the now range.
All right, so then we also have the road calming measures where you reduce Blanco to 2 lanes. And there are 2 comments regarding that. That's reduce Blanco to 2 lanes, 1 turning lane, protected bike lanes, that type of thing.
There's a subcommittee on that.
I was on that subcommittee with Ty Lawson, the council member for that district appointed. We did a lot of research on it. I thought it sounded like, after I learned about it, I thought it sounded really neat. I think Lance brought up some questions about it last time. It's one of those things that's somewhat counterintuitive. You know, you think, gosh, this road's busy. Do we really need to do this? But as we researched it and it's been done in other places, it seemed like a worthwhile project that would improve safety and maintain the capacity. I would just say it's not 2 lanes, it's 3. so very lame.
I think, my suggestion would be that we collapse all of those type of comments into one that says citizenry would like Blanco Road dealt with to make it safer, or calmer, whatever, without being over prescriptive. If there's already a subcommittee working, that's
No,
not.
the subcommittee
I
did
think
its
it-
work and then it went away, it's done.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be useful for them to hear that the community really wants something done. And don't put it on a shelf and forget about it. This is a big
It
deal.
doesn't seem to include the bike lanes, though. If you just say a generic, that citizens are wanting something done.
Well, you can list as many things in there as you want. Bike
And I'd like to
lanes,
consider
traffic
bike
calming,
lanes.
bike lanes, pedestrian, hawk light,
Okay.
I mean, all of it.
I'll mark this one as a duplicate, this one is more
Not
detailed.
the hawk,
So you do want this, at least one detailed one?
I think it should be in there. That might actually wind up being included in something that is part of a community-wide hike and bike trail network, and, that doesn't necessarily stand alone.
This is if Greenway is extended here, a crosswalk will be necessary. This is the Curry Creek crossing. Would you like to acknowledge this, endorse this as a crossing?
Are they talking about extending it behind Village Drive? Is that the, I can't tell from the map. Yeah, it is Village Drive. Well, I will tell you that that area actually is owned by the neighborhood, not by the city. So the neighborhood would have to consent or have their property condemned to get that greenway extended. I don't think it's a real high priority in my view. I'll tell you, I got a house that borders that green belt. It's for sale if anybody wants to buy one. Everybody's looking. But I don't know that that's going to be a high priority for the public because that property is currently privately owned.
And I also think that, well, first of all, it would be lovely from a greenway walking perspective to have a greenway that continued through that area, recognizing that I think the homeowners would have to be in favor of it. I think that initially they were opposed to it when the greenways went in. I think a lot of homeowners have come around and realized it's, they're advertising, and when houses are for sale, they're like house against the greenway. So some people really like that.
That HOA wouldn't grant the city an easement for the
Okay.
trail.
But anyway, the last thing I was just going to say is that I think a crosswalk is premature to discuss until the greenway exists there.
Well, I was on council when that was suggested, and that HOA said not only no, but hell no, and we will see.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't there then, but that was my recollection of how they shared the story with me.
That was
All the drug dealing and crime that the trail would create.
It was awful.
Didn't that project get reconfigured or reimagined?
I don't know.
But I think it's important to recognize the connection between Curry Creek and Number 9. That's why there ought to be, I think, an inclusion of hike and bike trails on Blanco Road between Curry Creek and Number 9 so you can link those trails safely and easily.
So this one is a do not recommend or do not include?
This one I don't think we recommend, no.
And we're not talking about the greenway, we're talking about the crosswalk here.
Crosswalk.
I mean, what I would say is that there is, when you come off the greenway there, it actually turns you to the left and it brings you up to that neighborhood.
It does.
And maybe there would be a need for a crosswalk there that connects it to the neighborhood on the other side of the street. Does that make sense? I can't remember the names of any of those streets right there.
It tees into Dawn Drive, but I don't recall where
Right. So on the right there is what I'm talking about. Right, exactly. Those two streets, I could imagine there being a crosswalk there at some point because there's people who walk and bike between that area.
Right in there.
There's nowhere to cross the road for a long ways. You have to cross at the gas station up the hill or at the high school. I mean, it's a long ways to the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one, Blanco Road, is the floating sidewalk is dangerous and unsightly, considered narrowing the road to the north adding trees and landscaping. This line was drawn here.
By the.
Oh, that's
Is that the new
Floating site is a
floating sidewalk that they built?
It's in the middle of the road, like Chaparral neighborhood. There's like a driveway with homes, a road here, and then Blanco Road. So it's just a peninsula
Oh, yeah.
or a floating sidewalk. It's right in the middle out
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Oh, totally.
I've wondered about that. It's kind of a curious anomaly.
We can, first of all, we don't have the greenway, but if we did get the greenway, can we go under the road?
Possible.
Back up here on this.
What is the recommendation here?
We skipped to 116. They were talking about the weird kind of standalone sidewalk
Yeah.
thing.
This just seems more like a statement of fact rather than a recommendation, so I don't know what to do about it.
I mean, honestly, if the road
Yeah.
calming issue gets implemented, this would be solved.
Yeah.
And we did talk about that during.
Yeah.
So this is,
And it.
There you go. Yeah, that's the consensus.
oh, you did not.
Okay, we're skipping to roadway now?
Yeah, okay, and so now we're finished with Blanco because we did the roads the last time. Now we can go to the roads. And so I'm gonna start on Main with all the comments about Main. And I will say, of the 36 road recommendations I included in the attachment this week, and the 39 pedestrian, the vast majority of each are about Main Street.
Yep.
Main Street took a lot of comments. So, the first two, I believe, are about the River Road and Main Street intersection. Statistically high rates of traffic accidents, intersection needs improvements. A comment about the pedestrian crossing.
And well, there's several duplicates about that one, right?
Right.
Yes.
So maybe we
These
can
two I
pick
know
the
are
best
duplicate.
one and then eliminate the others or something?
Right, this one is the second one. This one is the roundabout suggested by TxDOT in the Kendall Gateway study.
Does it say one lane or two lane roundabout? Be a two lane roundabout?
Have to be a two.
I don't remember, does anybody remember that?
I think it, do you have access to, can you pull it up, Arthur?
I can pull it up.
But her computer's connected to the screen.
True.
Is there any way that we can hear all of the recommendations and then discuss,
We can go through all of them.
and then go back and discuss them? Because it seems like we get going on one and then the next two or three,
So these are all, I'll scroll through all of the main ones. And I did break up Main between South Main, North Main, and Main. And that's
So they're
totally my definition of those separations. So,
Main.
Main.
We understand.
See? All right, so this is, consider slowing speed to 25 miles per hour.
And we don't need to worry about what TxDOT says.
Let's see, this is a plea for us to take over, a Bernie, to take over ownership of Main Street. I see that it's cut off a little bit there.
Northern, I believe that's actually a master plan item as well. Good reference.
City roadway.
And the idea there is that you can eliminate traffic, just prohibit it.
That was also another crowdsource.
I mean, that's the motivation.
We could do medians,
Different
different wider
parking.
sidewalks, or we could do all sorts of stuff that we would have control over.
That was recommended as far back as RUDA.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Some of these are, like I said, a lot of these will be the same thing because everyone kind of has the same concerns about Main Street.
So I think you could compile all those things, and then when we go for the next run, we can get picky about what exactly we say.
So this was a walking only
know how business is surviving
downtown.
traffic.
It's not gonna happen.
Use it for
That's not gonna happen.
around that Main Street south.
This is add a
I know I'm an
light,
engineer, but it's.
add a light at Oak Park Drive.
You're one of the people.
That Oak Park and Main Street.
Actually, I like that idea.
Bigger is better.
There's another no trucks should be allowed in downtown.
Yes, thank you. It is 2 lane. Denise found it
Okay.
on her phone quicker than I could find it on my computer.
2-lane roundabout.
Were you able to find that roundabout? Okay.
Denise found it, yeah.
Okay.
Parking should be moved off Main Street.
There's a lot of angles in this.
All bridge.
Maybe a good idea.
It's basically all bridge.
There's another parking along Main Street, obstructs the vision, obstructs the view.
3D print.
Same thing. Obstruct the view for cars.
Angle so that everybody can back out from the car.
So the parking obstructs the view of the
People,
building? Are people trying to play out?
people pulling out, it sounds like people pulling out from the side roads. Yeah. The people, the cars are,
Like when you're leaving the bakery, the parking on the
Oh, yeah.
street, it makes it difficult to see the oncoming traffic.
There's actually a yellow stripe painted on the curb that everybody ignores. I know because I turn off that street every day.
see, this was make the light at Rosewood, flashing light after 9 PM.
So by Mr. D.
See, it's called duty flash, and that's something that I don't think will help traffic, and 9 PM and on. I'm sure it's helping people that are driving through there late, but let the city worry about it.
I think maybe
Keep
there-
that data, and it's worth something to the city,
There's the
not
next stop now.
to this committee.
I was thinking, like, I know I've driven into the town, coming back from the airport at midnight, and I roll into the town, and there's nobody to be seen, and I spend 2 minutes sitting at a red light. So I think maybe they're thinking about that.
That, it is, that's called duty flash, and that's a great idea, but I don't think it's a job of this committee, I said it.
Well, can I ask a fundamental question? Jeff, what control do we have over 87 Main Street? TxDOT?
It's all text dot.
It's all TxDOT, so what control do we have?
We could provide suggestions or ask them to look into it. I know they, in the last couple of months, they've retimed all the lights. So in theory, 46 and Main Street, once you hit green, you should be able to drive through. Before, because I know the Rosewood one was one that before that I would always get stuck at, but they've synced them and kind of made them all time.
Is that
now.
going both east and west? Because we sat and saw the eastbound traffic real boogered up at Herf and coming off of Main. Not so much when it was traveling west and turning onto Main.
I just know that they've retimed all the lights recently in the last couple of months.
We also lost a left turn signal at that intersection. Rosewood, there used to be a protected left turn.
But all we can do is make recommendations.
Correct, we could just ask.
On any
Should we as a collective group consider making a policy recommendation that the city get that back, or get that from TxDOT, so that it can control its own destiny?
Correct, if Main Street were ours, then we
Right.
would have our own control.
Then we could do some of these things people are asking,
So
other than
that's
just,
this recommendation, or this.
That is one of the recommendations on here.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, so we can,
But City of Bernie owns and possesses 2 traffic signals.
right.
So Oak Park and Herf, and Old San Antonio and Herf.
This would more than double your current state.
Those are the only 2 signals that I operate.
Right.
Every other signal in town is TxDOT.
I think that's a problem. Local control is always better.
And Main Street Yes.
Here, here. Northern, we need to give you a whip so you can crack it every now and
And start
then.
giving a buzzer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what I'm hearing is, this one, we would like to endorse the idea, is that correct, of Bernie eventually taking over Main Street?
Yes. That's my big.
Sorry, Jeff, but yes. More work for Jeff.
Be out there at midnight on a Sunday, with a screwdriver.
And just as a reminder, this doesn't mean that we're officially adopting any of these. We'll have more discussion about them later, right? Because I think it would be interesting to hear from some of the city people, what are the cons of that? Are there reasons that we don't want to improve it?
Cons are a ridiculous maintenance amount that we'll have to.
Right,
add
the
into
huge
it.
amount of money that will.
So
Yeah.
this
And
one
so-
is a duplicate, so I'm just going
And
to.
it goes back to,
Okay.
well, they're not, but there are a lot of vehicles and trucks that are on that roadway. And so the maintenance on it is a lot big. So if we take that over, we're taking over that maintenance cost as well. Unless there's a way that the trucks are going a different way, then that maintenance cost wouldn't be as big a deal.
It seems like to make a recommendation like that without an additional recommendation of an alternate route is inviting some trouble.
It does layer that, yeah.
I think it's worth having more discussion about.
Well, that's why they won't get it over to us without it.
Okay, so, roundabout at River Road and Main Street.
I'm good with that.
Leave it in for now, I think.
Northern, that's on page 112 of the KB and figure 62.
Okay. I'll get that out.
Is it possible, Northern, in future rounds of this, to be able to grab that image and plop it in this so we could, yeah, that might be fun to. I'm not adding it to your to-do list, but it would be cool.
Yeah, you are. That's exactly what
But if you say that
Can
you're
it
not.
meet to scale?
And I know, like.
Not for somebody like you picked up on it right away.
I have 3 daughters. I know.
He knows.
I'm going to bring those guys.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I'll bring you all my kids in there.
Okay, so this was, consider slowing speed on Main Street to 25. This is-
So I would comment that whether it's a city road or a TxDOT road, the speed limit laws are based on the 85th percentile of actual cars driving. So the only way to repost the speed limits is for the people to actually start driving slower. In fact, if we were to do a speed study, and this would come up on other places, to actually do the speed study to lower it, we actually find out we have to raise the speed limit.
What if
So
we
Jeff,
put a bunch of
what is the
speed bumps out
vehicle
there?
count on Main Street currently?
I don't have that number off the top of my head memorized. Sorry. I have it upstairs, but I don't know.
When we were talking about that, how we'd like to see what those numbers are, and along River Road as well.
How about level of service? That's easier to communicate, level of service. Well, is that an E or F?
I don't remember. I don't remember that one. We
We
have lots of
level
studies
service.
elsewhere, but not that.
This one is a do not include because we can't do anything about it, right?
Well, if we ended up, I mean, I think it's okay to make recommendations for what we would do if we did acquire Main Street.
Yes, that.
And I have been in many downtowns across the country where 25 miles an hour is the speed limit. Oftentimes, my understanding is the Chamber of Commerce is really like that because people drive slower and they're looking at stores as they're driving by, and it just encourages a safer pedestrian environment and decreases the rate at which that Main Street is used as the big main thoroughfare through the town. I kind of like the idea. I don't know if it'd be, there might be others that really don't like it, but I kind of like the idea.
It kind of ties back into the city taking that back and reconfiguring that somehow, medians or increased sidewalks or something.
Next.
That
Okay, I'll
naturally
put it
slows
in.
it.
Okay.
What did we decide?
I put it in include, we can clean that up later. This is a create a no traffic downtown.
That certainly eliminates congestion. I don't think it's realistic.
I know.
Take care of that speed problem.
Take that speed problem, take that speed bump.
Check out the traffic signals.
You'll build up to the neighborhood.
Actually, still at work. It's all about riding a horse on Main Street. Stops 10 miles an hour.
This is add a light at Oak Park and Main.
I would say yes to that. That's a long stretch of road from River Road down to wherever the next light is. Earth, I think.
Yeah, John's Road, Oak Park's had a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
It's a scary turn too.
It's a scary turn.
That's true.
And they're using that to cut through.
People are cutting through her.
Well, the difficulty of using alternative routes going from School Street over towards Herf is that you have to cross Main, and there are no lights other than if you go all the way down to Bandera or all the way over to the other end of School Street.
But again, that would be a tech stop project.
Northern, my thought here is, I don't know that a light, especially if we're really trying to facilitate better flow through the town, is the best alternative, but it does seem like some kind of solution for pedestrians, at least there, or some kind of better intersection design. I don't know, I'm just wondering if we should just put a note that improving, like creating a way for pedestrians. I don't know that we need to say a light, is what I'm getting at. I think there's other options that might work there.
How about intersection of some kind?
Short of the roundabout,
But
it's a safety
he's
thing,
also
John.
emphasizing
There's a million
pedestrian.
cars trying to deal with it.
Oh, right, so
With safety.
it could be a roundabout, it could be another traffic hawk where it only turns red if you push a button, sort of thing, but you're right.
The car wouldn't do it.
Okay. Is this more of a comment?
I do. Good risk.
We don't have any authority to tell trucks not to come there, right?
No. Only tech stop.
They will make that.
I did think we should put like an arch over the road that says
Certain
like 10 feet high or
This is a
something.
parking issue.
Just freaking out.
Yes. Could a solution, a very easy solution to this be a recommendation to repaint the curves? Can y'all do that?
Yeah. I will tell you, we repainted the curbs yellow last Christmas time before Dickens, and within a week, they were all marked up again. So it's something we can't do weekly or monthly. But it amazed me how fast they got there and marked up with the tires.
That creates.
So was the question about parking on Main as in alternative parking or?
This comment is merely that the parking should be moved off Main Street.
And then they said something about adding a turn lane too. I'm having a hard time, my knee jerk is I'm having a hard time seeing how that's gonna work.
Didn't we talk about reconfiguring the way we park cars on Main Street as a part of one of our initial
I
conversations?
think that's worth talking about. I think the idea of a readjustment of Main Street is definitely worth talking about, but the idea of just taking cars, like saying no parking and adding a turn lane with it being 2 lanes in both directions is too much.
So this is a do not include.
I don't know, Bob, what were you gonna say?
Well, back in the time when I was on council, this suggestion, which was really controversial with the merchants, went hand in hand with the obligation to build a parking garage. If you're gonna take cars off of Main Street, we gotta have somewhere for them to park, and that is another one of these insanely expensive structures to build. Doesn't mean it's not a good
What
idea.
about better pedestrian access to Main Street so they park in the neighborhoods, like in front of Bryce's?
I'll be over later.
I mean, I like the idea of exploring sort of a right sizing of Main Street where we try to make it a real pedestrian friendly place. It's a little bit slower and is more charming in that way, but this doesn't seem to be, I'm not reading this as that.
From my perspective, I would leave the suggestion in there for future consideration. I think what we're gonna wind up with, out of a number of these recommendations, is that we're gonna combine them into a recommendation that a downtown Main Street study be conducted that includes the merchants, the pedestrians, and the people who use that, so that you get something comprehensive done. There's a lot of complexity there.
But you gotta solve the congestion problem
Right.
first.
Well, I mean,
And I just don't see any of these solving much of the
Don,
congestion.
has there been any discussions within the merchants or within the city about building a parking garage? It seems like I.
oh yeah, there's,
But there's nothing on the plans or land set aside or.
There's some ideas.
I mean, one of the things, I mean, we talked about ARPA money one time, maybe doing something jointly with the city. Or, yeah, I mean, it just, there's a lot of other priorities, but, yeah, I think.
But I would think that taking parking off of Main Street has to be hand in hand with the parking garage.
If you want to do that, I mean, I'm not a merchant, but a lot of people, I mean, traffic is good for business. I mean, you know, to a certain extent, you got to have traffic, you know. And so they may like that. It does give pedestrians a sense of safety if you're on the sidewalk, that you eliminate, unless you widen the sidewalk and then include street trees or other stuff. So it's a complicated circumstance that needs to be studied comprehensively.
Is there any benefit to having the parking available during certain hours and unavailable during other hours?
Can I, is it, I mean, I think you're asking really good questions about this, but I'm also wondering if maybe this is the type of discussion we should have when we get into that issue.
Solving
Kind of like, yeah, I'm cracking the whip for Northern.
Maybe Theo
And maybe we combine it later with several.
This is the flashing light at Rosewood at night. I believe you said it was not possible?
It's possible, but I don't know that that's a congestion problem. That's a convenience problem.
Yeah, it's not congested, it's 9 o'clock at night, just takes you extra minute to stop.
Maybe the policy is they can't ticket you for running a red light after 9 o'clock.
So now we can move on to the North Main. Again, these are just my.
Bryce, wasn't this one of the most popular?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was in the top 5 in
Yeah.
crowdsourcing.
Is this the 5 points?
This is 5 points. I believe we even talked about it briefly last week because it was also in the Adler fund.
Correct.
Because I could not isolate them all.
Do it. So that move we approve.
Do it.
We're running to the top.
Is this the roundabout or is this dead-ending School Street?
This is the roundabout.
For John.
At the very end.
This is the roundabout, 5 points. Mhm. This is a roundabout
1376 and
Right.
87.
near the,
EMS station.
thank you. I was going,
Is there something less that can be done at that intersection, like a dedicated left turn lane or, a right turn, build up speed lane instead of a full roundabout?
There's an XL lane going west. I mean, I drive through there a lot and I don't see congestion there.
That's kind of nice. If it's not broken, we're gonna have a hard time with priorities.
I agree.
Yeah.
and I will tell you, this can come up again later, and we can flesh this out later, because there is a road suggested that expands, so if this one does not get included, it's not a big deal, because it comes back in a different recommendation.
The radio's for.
This is going to Main Street South, dedicated right turn lane. This is near Dog and Pony.
Still
Mhm.
On the Herb.
Right.
Oh, yeah. But it's turning right onto what, onto her?
Onto her.
Okay. I think John Kite devised, drew a roundabout at that same
I have that
intersection.
picture.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like it's better. fixed.
Instead of a dedicated right turn lane, to use a roundabout to make that right turn.
Yeah, and John Kite drew one, the whole schematic there, so, I mean, maybe, I don't know, depending on what Don was saying about just sort of including packages, we could include it, or we could say, I'm not exactly sure.
I would leave it in there for now.
Okay.
I think it's viable standalone or as a package, part of the package.
This is Bandera. Yes, Bandera, where Bandera crosses Main Street.
Over there.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do there.
Well, the traffic patterns, just to be off property, the traffic patterns change once the entire expressway stuff is done.
I don't know what you can do there.
We've studied it a couple times, and anytime we've studied that, there really isn't much of it. It's too much. We have left turn lanes, right turn lanes, and we have all the lanes. All the lanes that it has, I think it has, saves.
When they do their iPhone surveys, that's where the center of Bernie is, center of the university.
Because everybody's stopped.
Yeah.
Well, it's right there, go that way to HEB, go that way to Walmart.
And those two are kind of like the text dot issue anyway, so we're limited on what we can do.
Which bucket does it go
I know where it
in?
is, I see the security service.
Was there a suggestion for an improvement?
It's a roundabout. This was a suggestion for a roundabout there.
That's not a good place for roundabout. It's past the traffic.
All the engineers were saying this.
Yeah, I haven't, are any of the traffic engineers in here feeling like, yeah, that's possible there?
No.
Yeah, that's, I don't, that's my.
Steve, that was a quick note.
Don't hesitate.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah,
It's a problem spot. I don't know what to do there.
Be patient.
one is text dot controls that. Two, maybe the traffic patterns will change once I attend.
This is across the street from Buc-ee's. This is Main Street South. It's basically the mess that they, or
It's all under construction, right?
Yeah, that's another one. That one for sure, we don't know. We don't, I mean, it's gonna be completely different.
So there's a question though, this came up in this project subcommittee about a connector behind Buc-ee's. What was the, that goes down to Scenic Loop
So
Road?
Main Street will cross the interstate, and it'll go across through the Buc-ee's property, and it'll go all the way down to Regent Park where it turns into Telford Way.
Okay.
So Telford Way will eventually become Main Street.
That was one of
this
the
one
old.
can't go in there.
And this, so that's on the Bernie City proper side.
Yeah, this
And
is
this is all,
Does that mean
even,
the other side's
even
improper?
since this study was done, TxDOT's already redone this area.
So do y'all eliminate that one?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's another,
Yeah.
this is another roundabout at
Christus Park.
Walmart.
Walmart, thank you.
John Kite drew one here as
I
well.
have that one too.
You gotta make John happy.
Is it smart to put a roundabout, two roundabouts that close together?
No.
I mean, is that okay?
They do it.
So it wouldn't be a problem.
You can almost make a figure eight volumes, though,
Get over your
opposing movements.
Okay.
Can't get out. I've seen something like a figure eight.
Yeah. I don't think we want to.
They have peanut roundabout.
Yeah.
So this is an include, did you guys say this? And this one just got pulled in because I did this by search, by word. And so various main lanes, this was an underground tunnels recommendation. So,
No.
Was it just general underground tunnels or what was there?
underground tunnels, yes.
Where on I-10?
Costly though, you say.
Use cars feature.
You can just trench and then lay some concrete on top.
46 West Almond, yeah, they wanted underground tunnels.
Sounds like a bad idea. I'm just thinking of what Dr. Billy had to say. It might be part of the aquifer before too long.
Okay, so that's all of that. That is all of the, auto, sorry. Moving over to the pedestrian side, again, a lot of these will be duplicates. There are, it's 27 of the 39 comments were about Main Streets, for the ones I filtered out for today.
For pedestrian driving.
Yes, it's all pedestrian.
Is that, do we just want to summarily put those into the Main Street package to be studied?
It's probably easier to, you guys just look at it and see if anything you don't want.
From memory, some of them are kind of, to be honest, some of them are kind of maintenance, trip hazards and other stuff like that are on that list.
Yeah, like crosswalk is needed, crosswalk is there.
Wait, the one that says crosswalk is needed, crosswalk is there.
This column is everything that Jeff Carroll gave.
So since it's there,
We don't
we
need-
would agree to remove that one?
Yes.
That happens a lot in the crowdsourcing.
Then the next one says it's needed on the bridge too, so it's already there now.
I will say that those pedestrian sides on that bridge are pretty narrow.
This one?
There are times when I'm walking by with my dog, I feel like I need to pick him up and carry him, and he's only 13 pounds. He's a small guy. It's not accessible for two people shoulder to shoulder.
Does it improve congestion?
If only there was a way we could have built a separate pedestrian bridge over the river and someone else would have paid for the whole thing for us.
Well, I think that was.
Oh yeah, you're right. There was a
That
whole
didn't do
deal. It just got vetoed by, everyone voted for it. Sorry, Bob's remembering that. Yeah.
Some people don't want to look at it.
But again, textile controls the mayors.
So any of these you guys want, other than that one, the crosswalks there. This was to add a pedestrian bridge on,
Northern, I don't, should we, if they just start talking about maintenance, that really isn't the pedestrian.
Why would we take that off?
The suggestion, right?
Which is also the second time that's brought up, so the route at.
No, I agree. That one about pedestrian bridge comes up a lot of 87. You know, that's a white sidewalk in the system. It's a house. It's going to give that picture like this. So it would have the attraction of the something did not say this time.
it's already there.
Hey Northern, I'm not exactly sure where we're at right here.
I'm just scrolling through and you guys looking for things
Tell
that
you
can
to
be
stop?
pulled off the list
Pulled off, okay.
so that the rest can just go in, like you guys were talking about the Main Street package.
Okay, I'm having a little hard time telling what they are.
Yeah.
The other thing it might be, I know this is long, but maybe we can just kind of quickly, we can click on them and see what they are. I don't know, if people disagree and other people are able to figure it out super fast, then great, but.
So this is a mid-block pedestrian crossing. This is across from Veterans Plaza.
That's another hawk light suggestion, and I think it came from somebody in my neighborhood viewing it as a compromise. Instead of having pedestrian lights all over the place, if there were one in the middle of Veterans Park to get over to the Catholic Church, it would service a lot of us trying to walk from where we live up to downtown. You want to cross Main Street along the way safely.
Yeah.
Because it's on the face of it, it's absurd to have one in the middle of a block, but I do.
There's no other crossing.
And that's something that I was talking to Ben about is, I know I keep saying, does it help congestion? But a lot of these pedestrian bike ideas could be already solved, and don't y'all have a bike plan? And are we looking at that plan and commenting, because that plan may already have that idea resolved, and they may say it needs to be at Veterans on this side of the Mexican restaurant or over here, And we're just,
I don't recall that that was on the pedestrian bike plan.
well, but.
It was mostly in the center downtown area and around some of the schools, but I don't remember anything on the north end of the lane.
Well, but Bobby's point was we need to make sure we're integrating, like, those things need to be cohesive, so we're not just
Yes,
sort of.
I know I'm being, I know I'm being very critical about some of the pedestrian and some of the bike. I used to be a cyclist, and you can tell I'm not anymore. But it's not solving congestion. There's probably another source of information that solves it, or should be solving it if it's not solved. And that's a bike and sidewalk plan, or.
So Bobby, we had in the project subcommittee, we had John Ramirez, who works for the school district,
Okay.
take a look at the bike and pedestrian plans that are already on the books, to see if there were any additional add-ons that he knew about. And so the recommendations that we put forth for pedestrians and bikes were cued off of what the city currently has.
Okay.
So those were add-ons, but again, I have to say that there are many things that aren't, and I believe this is one of them.
Yeah, I'm not
And I should add too that when this committee was formed, my memory was that it was very clear that we were not only being tasked with congestion, like trying to solve some of the traffic congestion, but also sort of making sure that as we do that, we're improving other types of mobility for, hiking or, walking trails and stuff. And that's why we had the 3 crowdsourced tools, the vehicle one, what were the 3? Those biking. Oh, and then environmental.
Yeah, sensitive.
Sorry to, I heard kind of the same, but it's not, the priority is congestion is what I understand.
You're right. That's the one that's driving everybody's concern. I think
That doesn't mean we're limited to that, though. I think the committee's sense was that we're going to address congestion, but we think as a committee, pedestrian safety is important as well. So,
And marry them.
Yeah.
In that project.
Mobility in a broader sense
Sure.
than just.
Yeah, if you can move around town on foot, you don't get your car out. And there are a lot of us that do run around.
Most definitely. The purpose of a good sidewalk plan too, not just bike. Yeah.
So this one was the mid-block pedestrian crossing. Do we want to include that in there, just to acknowledge
I'd say so.
that community has an issue? That is a long expanse. Sidewalk.
Fair Oaks.
Yeah. Seen the people driving those little personal golf carts.
What was that next? Oh, are we not going through all of them? We're just going to kind of, we're looking for one
This is the
six.
sidewalk, has a step near
That
the,
steps, he doesn't have a ramp.
Okay.
It's young everywhere.
I don't know where that is. Oh, I do.
so a handicap access is.
And it sure does have steps over it. And there's no wheelchair cut-in.
So I'm hearing include that.
I think it's.
I think if you're gonna include rails, it ought to include wheelchair cut-ins to go around the steps.
I think all those should be ADA.
This is at Tyson. But this is the crossing at Bear Moon. Crosswalk needed here.
They have an annual Friday.
Talk louder. Talk louder.
Sorry, we're having crosstalk over here. Sorry.
Crosswalk at Bear Moon Bakery, across Main Street.
Too close to the stoplight.
I would say, I would say maybe.
Jeff, he may know, crosswalk at Tyson, is that too close to the light at River Road?
Crosswalk at Tyson, Bear Moon.
Okay. Well, I'm trying, so what's the,
They were
Across Main.
on the bare moons on it?
Across Main.
across Main. Is it too close together?
It's another one without text on it.
Still, it's text up, but yeah, let me look at the map.
I mean, we're spending a lot of time talking about crosswalks across Maine, and we can't impact that, really, other than to make recommendations to TxDOT. Is that?
What we're going to do is make a policy recommendation about that topic, of taking
Okay.
it over, and and then list a bunch of things that then the city could consider doing.
Okay, that was my hope. Okay, good.
You know, the other thing that might help pedestrian crossings in that shy of a crosswalk is to back the yellow paint a couple of cars, so that there's at least 4 car lengths before that intersection, so that pedestrians can safely stick their heads out.
So we, not actually that one, but other intersections on Main Street, we did, this last time we yellow painted, we did increase that, and Bryce and others got an earful.
From the business.
Yeah.
Businesses.
All right, so the crosswalk at Tyson is not possible?
I mean, it's a TxDOT issue, but the spacing wise it might work.
I mean, what I can say is I see people running across the road there all the time.
There's one point the tower there.
That's me.
It's you all. Listen, I'll speak.
Is the crosswalk at Highland across Main Street?
Okay, here's my suggestion, is things that Highland and Maine need to be coordinated with things at Oak Park and Maine, because they're half a block apart.
Yeah.
And they're both very busy streets. So
Needs to be something.
I don't disagree with it, because that's where I live a block from there, but I live a block from Oak Park as well, and so they're both a mess.
Agreed?
Yeah.
So that it can be addressed. Improvement of sidewalks, this is Main Street between, this is just south of the creek, all along Main Street.
Oh, where the old
Improvement of
other side
sidewalks.
used to be.
Yeah, included.
These are, the next two are pedestrian scramble crosswalks at the Dinger intersection and
What?
Rosewood.
Yeah, what is a scramble?
So the scramble intersection is where all automobile traffic stops, and pedestrians can cross any direction they want to.
Oh.
And then it goes back to green, and the pedestrians have to wait.
Like there's the ones that go across the corner, they crisscross as well.
Yes, they,
All these
pedestrians have
crosswalks,
absolutely right of way.
all these crosswalks and stuff, if you put them everywhere, it's gonna slow down traffic along Main Street. So what's the goal, you know, the mobility of the vehicles versus the mobility of the pedestrians in this scenario?
And the safety.
Where is that located?
This is this one is at the Dinger.
There is quite a bit of pedestrian traffic there at a lot of different times of day, but I don't sense that, I think it's a good concept, but again, I think it needs to be studied to see whether it's viable right now or maybe in the future.
In my sense, the scramble stuff, the places I've seen those are like downtowns in massive cities, like in New York and stuff. I mean, that's where you see those giant crosswalks like that. I don't know, maybe they work in this situation, but my knee jerk is.
They have a couple in San Antonio down on Flora Street.
Courthouse in Flores and.
But I mean, the pedestrian traffic there is.
Well, it's also, the county has their parking structure.
Right, yeah.
So it's really there for their parking structure, and you go diagonal across it to the county courthouse.
I don't.
This intersection
Yeah.
is problematic for pedestrians.
I mean, school district, I don't want to speak for the school district, but I know some that won't pick up the kid in a bus if you're 3 blocks away. Is it 3 blocks maybe?
It's 2 miles, or is it 2 miles?
They won't pick you.
Under 2 miles walking, unless it's considered dangerous.
In a downtown urban area, sometimes it's 3-4 blocks, which is 3 times 300, that's 1,200. What I'm saying is,
Sidewalk needed on bridge.
the kids have to walk 3 blocks.
I think
We can require our folks to walk a block at least, 300 feet, come on.
On what?
You have crosswalks every block, messes up the traffic, and it's
Main
unsafe.
Street and River?
No, I want to talk about this one, guys. This is really bizarre.
Yeah.
This is down there,
Or by Discount Tire and Randolph Brooks?
yes, there is.
Awful.
It is amazing. If somebody wanted to walk from the Bevy Hotel to downtown Bernie, they have to run against traffic across a bridge in a traffic lane. And that's what this is talking about. It is the sidewalk access from down that part of town to anywhere, like up Bendale Road, the sidewalks start to exist, right? But that one is unbelievably dangerous.
Yeah, I've walked that before too, I was afraid of my
It
life.
is terrifying.
So, Mr. Chair, you're saying sidewalk, and there already is a crosswalk at the light, isn't there?
But there's no
Yeah, but if-
sidewalk on Main
But
Street.
if
Correct,
you
so the
did, you had to
sidewalks-
walk through parking lots and
Correct.
stores.
So the sidewalk's the critical part of it. That is correct. Yeah.
Is that a
can't get there.
duplicate Northern?
So I'm gonna say, the first one I included, the second one is the duplicate of the first one.
And I guess that one they put on the north side of the bridge and the other on the south, but I don't think that really matters. Right.
Crosswalk needed here, so that's beside the volunteer, or the Bernie Fire Department, across Main.
Yes.
I don't know about
Like
that.
Town and Country, like crossing over to Town and Country or crossing over to
I mean, there's
other.
there's probably a bunch of middle schoolers who have to walk right there that are on the east side of the Main Street. They have to walk in middle school.
I have watched families like cross over to come see their family members at Town and Country before. But
Basically, the community is saying that Main Street doesn't have nearly enough crosswalks.
The main, yes, everyone is saying that Main Street is both a, important, but also a
dangerous.
roadblock.
Well, on that end, it's not heavily trafficked by pedestrians, but at the same time, but it does have parking on each side, so you do have available a little bit of space you can give over to maybe putting a center piece that would allow pedestrians to cross from one side and pause, and then go over to the other side.
Raise median.
So there is no
Or-
center turn lane up there, is there? It ends right here.
But it's in the front of the fire department. Is it? Can you put it, would you flash light, like a
You wouldn't want
emergency?
to put an island there.
No, but a light that says, hey, it's controlled by the fire department when they're pulling out, pulling in, and it can be controlled maybe by a pedestrian button. And that's,
A honk and an emergency light. I'll ask him on Thursday, he'll be there.
So crosswalk, yes or no here?
I think it's a pretty low priority, but I mean, you can leave it in,
Low priority.
but it's gonna fall out later.
This is a comment about heavy pedestrian traffic. These are just general comments. It looks like on Main Street, 18-wheelers should not be allowed on Main Street.
I mean, just get rid of that. We can't do that, right? Yeah.
can't do nothing.
I think it's important though, I mean,
The comment's valid.
yeah, because it impacts everything else around town.
But we're not throwing away the comment.
Right.
That's the data I was talking about, that, let's not make it that data, let's put it in a report somewhere that sticks it with
I like the crowdsourcing.
improvements to Main Street. We need a
Correct.
Main Street study.
I mean, you could have in a bullet that says, many concerns about lack of crosswalks on Main Street. Number of people wanted less parking and fewer trucks on Main. Like you could summarize the nature of a lot of these with a few bullet points.
I'm including this one because we included it on the automobile side too. 18-wheelers, I included the heavy pedestrian traffic. We're always on this, we have that included.
We're gonna get to the congestion.
So remove all the people off Main Street?
If you did an easy job, we would have to mess it all.
Just cars.
No, only horses. Or sparrows, golf carts, only golf carts. That was you can't joke with yourself.
Just think,
No, I listen to big road around the outside.
kind of like the golf cart thing.
Not through Mary
And it's annoying as hell because of the golf
Did he record it on
That's
this?
why we got the speed limits where they are, so they can have better road.
I do, that's something that would affect them.
What is this one with?
Close to stopping point or road credit. I mean,
Main Street goes to right.
That's the.
Northern, can you use the microphone, please? We need to control this crowd a little bit.
Ben was cutting out.
we've got about 10 or 12 more pedestrian comments to go through, and then we're gonna call it an afternoon, so we can wrap that,
Come on, you guys can do it. 10 more. Come on.
So the sidewalks on, this is Main from the town square, right here. Patchy, do not allow for handicapped traffic.
I mean, the one advantage to having sidewalks along that area,
I would say include as a recommendation that the sidewalks are bad in
because
spots.
the senior
Senior.
living areas going up there, just beyond that.
What is that one?
These are sidewalks along South Main from Bandera to the I-10.
Some people are getting paid apartments to.
This is,
I think it's south.
That's right up here.
prevention of heavy traffic causing unsafe pedestrian and bike crossings. Is that the one we already had, kind of similar?
Actually, can we go back to that last one?
This one?
Are people walking the I-10 right there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Of all people asking that. You have people that.
I'm just saying, like, I drive that a lot. This is where like, after you, okay, I mean, I know where their shops are, but just the to I-10, to the bridge right there is where
Across
they're
the
talking
Whataburger employees,
Walmart
HEB employees.
But no, we're talking about south of that. We're talking
Down by
about, look at the map.
Yeah, there are apartments up there, and I've seen people walking to work from
Yeah,
like
the
Walmart.
Okay, right down there is where I was thinking about, okay.
And there's that Fiesta RV park down there.
There's apartments going in right up here, or right there, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This one, this is a very same spot. This is a duplicate. This is in front of Veterans Parkway. The sidewalks are tripping him.
It's across the street, it's
Right.
like Philip Manor.
Right.
It's a historic sidewalk, it's all broken up.
Yeah.
It's historically leaning towards Main Street.
Very narrow, I don't know what to do about it.
Include it just so it's addressed.
That's part of the Main Street package, I
Yeah.
think. That's true.
It's a rough area for pedestrians.
You don't know swallow that.
I believe we have addressed this one in the previous one up here. This is across from
Yeah.
Veterans Parkway.
Maintenance. Tripping hazard.
Okay, so what are they saying here?
This is from Adler to 40, or to River Road.
All of it.
Olive, multiple broken and uplifted slabs already
That's
tripping
a
it.
catch-all.
Yeah.
Delete all the previous.
What is this, a duplicate, not included?
Yes. Those are that sloping with
Those are very specific
We
addresses.
addressed this.
24 North Main, we saw it a while ago.
Yeah, that's.
624 North comments a while ago too.
This is a duplicate.
Maybe it's the chamber office.
This is all of the north side, or all of North Main. Need a sidewalk along Main Street up to Sisterdale Road.
There are a bunch of apartments being built up there too.
Yeah. On both sides.
And over on the School Street side too, right?
I'm just mixing other.
This is the very same one. The sidewalk has steps.
Yep.
Let's do with it.
Is that the one next to?
The historic one with the steps that's crumbling toward Main Street.
Philip Manor.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, it's on the other side.
There was another one with steps, just.
Is it?
Yeah, Kalani or Kalani. Younger.
Yeah, by the Kalani.
That's not there.
Sidewalk is too narrow, making it unavailable to some users.
Oh, that's, again, another historic little sidewalk that's about 2.5 feet wide for one lot. It's kind of an anachronism.
What
I mean, I think you can include that, but ultimately, this is all just gonna have to be summarized in a fix all the broken sidewalks on Main Street comment.
woefully insufficient handicap parking spaces downtown.
Are there any? Other than in the little parking area there at Richter's? And I think there may be one over by 259, but other than that, I don't know if there are very many at all.
Should we include this? It sounds like yes. Yeah, that one.
Very rude.
Nothing personal about There's probably 6 or 7 altogether in downtown Bernie, which begs the question, maybe it's a blanket statement about increasing accessibility to parking.
Yeah, the first sentence it sort of does that.
All right, so I feel like I have to say this. We are going to be still doing this next year if we can't get through these faster. And I don't know what the solution is for that, but
How many do we do a day?
not many at all. I had 38 road ones to go through, and we did not get through.
How many did we get through?
So is there any way that we can pull out the crowdsource information that's consistent with the project subcommittee and the interim recommendations?
Well, I mean, then we're gonna miss the ones that aren't in those.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if I just pull those out, that reduces the full size of what we have to consider.
And this is just my suggestion, I don't feel comfortable whittling this down by myself. That's not a decision I want to make. If I could get a couple of people from various groups to help me whittle these down, just like that, say, okay, this is a duplicate, or this cannot be done, that would make it go faster. But I don't feel comfortable making that decision myself. Otherwise, I think we're gonna keep doing this for a while.
Yeah.
We are gonna run over.
Northern, I think maybe there's a possibility that we could set up like a subcommittee structure of some kind to help pound through some of these. I don't know if maybe having a group of people who wants to look at the pedestrian ones and or go through them separately, but it seems to me like there's also going to be a lot of a separate category of ones that are highly controversial or need full committee. But it seems like a lot of these, I don't know, I'm just wondering if some of these real fix a sidewalk one need to be considered at the whole committee level.
There is, yes. The short answer is yes. I think we do need to just form a subcommittee, get that group of folks together, like I did with the automobile stuff when I put it in the Excel spreadsheet. I think it's the same thing. You just quantify those comments, put them in the same bucket, and then move on.
And you know, I have the ability to do that, but I don't want to. I don't want to be the one responsible for that.
And you need help, too.
Yes.
I offer to help. I offer to help. I do think they should, maybe it's not a bucket, but a tag on it somewhere should be solves congestion. Because if we started with it, I understand we got to look at other issues, but we can start with just, if we have to at the last minute, just say, well, these are congestion-related problems, and most of those are going to have a sister project on Main or a sister project elsewhere, and we can always tie them to that through this, through the software, through the program that we're using. So let's split it up and make sure I'll help put them in buckets. I just do think we need to tag it or make a congestion bucket.
So you want people to come sit down with you
I know, yep.
face to face?
Yep.
So we got one volunteer, two.
I'll do it.
Zeller, are you volunteering?
I volunteer.
All right, we're gonna put you on.
Sorry, really? I can make it. Yeah. Wait for him to call in sick.
And Bitsy. So that's three. Is that enough? You want one, Gary?
I'm not gonna turn anybody down.
I'll be along. Just
All right.
let me know. I'll get a ride from no one.
All right, that's good. Are we done today? Thank you, Northern. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work you're putting into this. Great job.
Northern.
We're gonna double your pay.
The second round of public comment. Just so you don't get the last word, I'm going to start with you. No, okay. Ms. Pearson, you weren't here for the earlier one. Do you have any
I
comment?
actually do have a question today.
Thank you.
Last week, it was mentioned that there are only 2 traffic lights in all of Bernie that are monitored by the city. One was Herf and Oak Park, and I can't remember what
So Old San Antonio and Herb.
So both on Herf, the new one.
Yep.
Thanks.
Tom?
I just, great meeting, a lot of work, it's grinding, hard work, Northern did great. But I'm thinking that going to the city, I know Jeff made a presentation, Denise was nice enough to send a video of the city to me to look at the meeting, and I was kind of bummed by what I had heard by the city council folk and the mayor, honestly, about what they said about the committee, and other people have an opinion of what they heard there, but I just thought, it doesn't reflect what's being done here. I'm wondering if you're not going to get it done before December the 1st of next year, do you go next month and say, this is what we have so far? Just give them a snippet of what it is so they know how much work you're doing and what it is we're doing. We have 15 projects we think are going to work. And just give them something, because they don't really know, and they're commenting on it, and there's some strong personalities there that are moving the direction away from this committee. That's what I got out of that. And I just think you need to be in front, and it might have to be you two guys. And maybe it's only a 10-minute presentation, but
I think there's some validity in that. And one of the things that Mayor Handren said is, the city of Bernie has to get in front of the narrative because it was hijacked or taken over by the alternative narrative of the anti-gateway folks. Well, he makes a valid point. We're not doing a very good job communicating our narrative, and I think your recommendation is good in the sense that just like we've broken down quite a bit of our recommendations in pieces and brought it to this committee, it seems like we could do the same thing with the city council. I don't know, Bryce, do you have a thought about that?
I agree. I think that's how I felt during the meeting. So getting that word out and making sure it's there.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
On that topic, without moving through the rest of the public comments, as the outreach committee, we were at somewhat of a dilemma about what message we should be putting out there, especially if there was not a call to action to send us more information. We felt we were at a point where we had accepted all the public suggestions and waiting until there was some meat to the bones to send out. Now, if there needs to be a proactive approach from the outreach committee and telling the committee where we are, telling the community where we are, including the public officials, we just need to consider that.
Would Kim come back to the meetings if we did that?
Maybe.
I think Bob and I will take that under advisement. I think minutes in the interim kind of message we need to send that probably he and I were the ones that need to deliver that and say, hey, y'all just sit tight. It's going okay. You feel a little bit like a football coach when you're, 2 touchdowns behind and there's 5 minutes left in the game, but you know you're gonna win.
Don, I'll just back up what Tom and Bitsy said. Communication is a good thing, especially, Tom mentioned this is grinding. Well, what the project subcommittee went through was equally as grinding in cutting up the county into quadrants and pie slices. We really got down to the minutia. And we used a lot of city information, we used a lot of school district information. Jeff was a big resource. I think after we finished that project, we could see why some of the recommendations that are in the city thoroughfare plan are in there. So if anything, I think it validates a lot of the work that's been done. They're just not aware of it. Bryce is aware of it, but because he's here.
Well, I thought between Bryce and Zach that they would have it covered, but.
Hey, I just want to add one last thing, I promise, is that I, on the communication front, I think I mentioned that the presentation I gave last week was kind of, spurred while I was on a plane flight and got curious about that and wrote an article about it, and I did share it with both of the papers. It's basically just a very positive article, I think, about the work the committee's doing, and I ended with just a little thing, you can find information about the committee at this website. Hopefully, this is another way of trying to get the word out there a little bit. So, and I got some really cool figures from Jeff too. That and I know we're trying to end the mid-block. The traffic capacity in a single lane is about 1,800 vehicles an hour, and through an intersection, it's about 600. And so what that told me is it's about 1/3 of our capacity is able to go through intersections. And so anyway, I thought that was pretty cool number.
Just get rid of intersections.
More roundabouts.
I really like the idea of you guys giving something to them. It was very apparent to me that we had one particular council member. She didn't know there was a website. She didn't know that there was minutes. She did not know that the public could come to the meetings or that they were coming to the meetings or participating. I honestly believe she does not even know that there's a video out there on the city's YouTube video site. So, yeah, you got some catching up to do with some folks and getting some mind changes. And the last thing is, the Camel Gateway was brought up. It was talked about, and I want to remind you guys to remind them, please, that if they decide to pull it off the shelf, they decide to touch it, they decide to breathe life into it with the City of Bernie stamp in any way, that map then becomes part of the city. And if they put it in a plan, our land is marked. I don't think they realize that. I'm pretty positive they don't realize the implication of that. I'm almost assuredly positive of that, because they didn't act like it mattered. It was just, we need to look at it, we need to pull it off and use it. It wasn't what happens after you do that. Okay?
Thank you.
I'll make a comment. I wasn't going to, but I'll introduce myself. My name is Lucas Heiler, and I'm a Planning and Zoning Commissioner. I work very closely with Chairman Van Wolf. The only reason I was here today is some of the decisions that I'm required to make as a Planning and Zoning Commissioner have a lot to do with traffic. And I've heard about these meetings, and I knew that I was able to attend, and have procrastinated, I guess, in attending one of these. And I'll tell you all, the information that you discussed today is very helpful for me and the public service that I do. On the other token, I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing here. Public service can be tough and heavy decisions and a lot of decisions to be made. So I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing to be a part of this committee. The last thing I would just say in sharing the information that you all covered today, the discussion of West Frederick or Frederick and North Street and a crosswalk there was minimized, and I actually live over here on North School Street, so I would probably benefit from a crosswalk the most, and that's also a direct path to the old number 9 trailhead, or you might look at it as the end. So when I'm trying to cross Main Street with 3 young children, it can be difficult. It's easier to cross Main Street than it is to walk down Blanco. So I will say that we would prefer to cross here, but I share that with you all. Hopefully, it's not minimized in the way it was in the discussion.
But again, thank you all very much for having me here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for that comment.
So my name's Larry Picasso. I just wanted to speak up and praise the committee for the work y'all done. Coming here for the last 4 to 5 months, kind of just sitting on the outside, it's really great that all the opinions and all the work the committee's done, with all the projects. I think it's nice to see how much work everybody's put in, whether it's the subcommittees here every other week. I just want to say that I think that's really awesome. I know it's a couple of hours every other Tuesday, and then whenever Dawn's throwing a third meeting in that 1 month, But I just want to say, as being a spectator for the last 4 or 5 months, I think what y'all are doing is amazing, and just keep it up. And I'm excited to see where it goes and what gets presented later on at the city council and to the commissioners. So.
And he has on traffic light socks.
Next
level.
That's a man passionate about traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Peter.
Closing comments? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. We'll see you.